the girl from the Whispering Hills. In the village of Opadi, there was always a soft wind that whispered through the trees. On one quiet morning, Mama Nneka, a kind old woman, went down to the lake to gather herbs. But instead of finding herbs, she found something unexpected. A baby girl wrapped in white clothes. The baby had no family, no name, just the soft smell of roses in the air. Mama Nneka decided to name her Ifeoma, which meant good fortune. She took the baby back to her small home, and from that day, Ifeoma grew up in the village. But Ifeoma was different. She never cried. She never spoke. She had a quiet magic that seemed to touch everything. Flowers bloomed where she stepped, and birds often perched on her shoulders. While the other children played, Ifeoma would sit still, watching the wind dance through the trees. The villagers, however, did not always see Ifeoma as a blessing. They whispered about her. They said she was strange. She speaks to the trees, some said. She walks where no one dares to go. The elders worried that Ifeoma might be more than just a girl, but something from another world. One night, as the moon rose high, a young man named Obiora grew curious about Ifeoma. He had heard the whispers and wanted to know if they were true. He followed her as she walked alone into the hills. The night air grew still, and the moonlight seemed to follow her. Then, at the edge of the forest, something strange happened. Ifeoma stopped and raised her hand. A glowing circle appeared in front of her, a door to another world. Inside, it was a sky full of stars and rivers that seemed to float in the air. Obiora gasped. He had never seen anything like this before. He stepped forward, but Ifeoma turned to face him. I know you are there, she said softly. You shouldn't have followed me. The chief has made a dark promise, and it's too late to turn back now. Before Obiora could ask anything more, Ifeoma stepped into the glowing circle and vanished. Obiora raced back to Mama Nneka's house and told her everything. Mama Nneka's face grew sad. She explained that many years ago, the village chief had made a terrible promise to the spirits of the forest. He had promised them offerings to keep the peace, but that promise had a price. The chief had promised to give the spirits something very valuable when the time came. Mama Nneka told Obiora, Ifeoma is not just a girl. She was sent here to stop the chief's dark promise before it's too late. Just there was a loud bang at the door. The chief guards had come to take Obiora away. They had found out that he had followed Ifeoma, and now they feared he knew too much. Obiora ran from the house and into the forest. He knew he had to find Ifeoma and stop the chief before it was too late. As he ran deeper into the forest, Obiora felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. The air felt cold, and he could see yellow eyes watching him from the darkness. He turned to see tall, thin figures stepping out from the trees, creatures with skin that looked like bark and teeth as sharp as broken bones. They hissed. You smell like the spirit girl, one said. Suddenly, a glowing light burst from a small stone in Obiora's pocket. The creatures shrieked and recoiled. But before they could get closer, Ifeoma appeared, glowing like the moon. She lifted her hand, and vines from the ground wrapped around the creatures, trapping them. They vanished into the earth. Leave him, she said to the creatures in a calm, strong voice. The chief is preparing the final offering. We must stop him before the full moon rises. Together, Obiora and Ifeoma hurried to the hidden shrine under a great tree behind Mama Nneka's house. Ifeoma touched an ancient stone table, and a bright light filled the room. Obiora stepped back in shock as Ifeoma's form began to change. Her eyes glowed white, and her hair floated in the air like fire. She looked like something from the stars. I remember now, she said, her voice echoing in the room. I am Ifeoma Uhammiri, the guardian of this land. I was sent here to stop the chief before the village is lost. As they left the shrine, Obiora could hear the drums of the chief ceremony echoing from the village. The chief had already begun the final offering to the spirits, and the people were gathered around the great fire. At the chief's command, the flames grew higher, and a terrible shape began to rise from the fire. A massive creature with eyes like glowing embers and wings of smoke. The chief held up a large knife, ready to make the offering. This is the final offering, he shouted, for peace, for power. But just as the creature reached for the chief, Ifeoma appeared, shining like the full moon. She stood tall and strong, and with a wave of her hand, She summoned water from the earth. The water rose up like chains, wrapping around the creature and pulling it back into the ground. The flames died down. The people stood in silence. The chief fell to his knees, trembling. I did this for you, for us, he whispered. The villagers looked around, their eyes wide. They saw Ifeoma, glowing like a star in the night. They saw the truth. She saved us, someone whispered. Obiara stepped forward. Will you come back? He asked Ifeoma, his voice soft. Ifeoma smiled. When you need me, she said, and turned toward the lake. She walked into the water and vanished, leaving only the smell of roses behind. Years later, children in Okabi would say that on some full moon nights, they would see a glowing girl walking in the hills. Some would smell the roses in the air and hear whispers in the wind. They would know that the spirit girl, Ifeoma, the girl from the whispering hills, was still watching over them. If you enjoyed this story, please tell me where you're watching from on the comment section. Give me a follow, like, and also subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you.